I was standing in the grocery store last week, and something caught my attention. The price tag on a bag of white rice had jumped again, up another 14% from just 6 months ago. And the woman next to me, she just put it back on the shelf. Didn't buy it. Walked away. And I thought, she doesn't know what I know. Because there are foods sitting on these very shelves right now that will outlast a recession, a supply chain disruption, inflation, or anything else coming down the pipe. Foods that do not expire. Foods that have been keeping families safe, fed, and financially protected for literally thousands of years. Most people walk right past them every single week. They don't know what to grab. They don't know why it matters. And they definitely don't know how to store any of it. Today I'm walking you through 12 of them. Real foods, shelf-stable, proven. Some of these you probably already have in your kitchen, but you're not buying nearly enough of them. And stick around for number 8. Because when I looked into the history of that one, and I mean really looked into it, I couldn't believe I hadn't been stocking it for years already. You won't believe number 8. But first, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. We do this every week. Practical information for people who want to stay ahead of what's coming. And what's coming is a lot. You want to be here for it. Let's get into it. Item 1, white rice. Let's start with the one that almost everyone already owns, but almost no one buys correctly. White rice, not brown rice, not wild rice. White rice, when stored properly, can last 25 to 30 years. That is not a typo. 30 years on a shelf. Government emergency preparedness agencies have tested this extensively, and the data is consistent. The reason brown rice doesn't make this list is the bran layer. It contains oils that go rancid within 6 to 12 months. But when you mill that layer away, which is what gives you white rice, you're left with something stable, dry, and almost indestructible. I personally started taking this seriously about 2 years ago. I picked up 5-gallon food-grade buckets and started sealing 20-pound bags of long-grain white rice with oxygen absorbers. The cost per meal works out to something ridiculous, like 11 cents a serving. When I checked Walmart and Costco prices last month, a 25-pound bag of long-grain white rice was running between $11 and $18 depending on the brand. That is a lot of stability for a very small investment. If you're buying it for long-term storage, you want to seal it in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers inside. Mylar bags work best. Keep it cool, dry, and away from light. You're looking at decades of food security from a single Saturday afternoon of prep. This is the foundation. Everything else builds on it. Don't walk past it next time you're at the store. Item 2, pure honey. This one has a history that most people find genuinely shocking the first time they hear it. Archaeologists excavating ancient Egyptian tombs found honey in clay pots that was over 3,000 years old. And it was still edible. Still honey. Still good. The reason is chemistry. Honey is hygroscopic. It pulls moisture out of everything around it, including bacteria. It has a naturally low pH. It contains small amounts of hydrogen peroxide produced by enzymes during the curing process. Bacteria simply cannot survive in it. Nothing can grow there. When I was researching this a while back, I called my local beekeeper, a guy who's been doing this for over 30 years. And he told me the only way honey spoils is if water gets into it. That's it. Seal it properly, and it will outlast everything in your pantry by a generation. The key thing to know is that crystallization is not spoilage. I used to throw away honey when it turned cloudy and solid. That was a mistake I made for probably 15 years. Crystallized honey is still perfect honey. You just set the jar in warm water for a few minutes, and it returns to liquid. For storage, raw honey in glass jars is your best option. The plastic containers at grocery stores work short-term, but glass is better for long-term. Keep the lid tight. Keep it away from moisture. That's it. A 2-pound jar of quality raw honey runs about $12 to $16 at most grocery stores right now. That jar could theoretically outlast you. That's a serious value proposition. Item 3, salt. Salt is so ordinary that people forget what it actually is. It's a mineral, a geological element. It has no expiration date because it cannot decompose. There's nothing biological in it to break down. The salt on your table today is chemically identical to what Roman soldiers were paid with 2,000 years ago. Salt has no shelf life. Period. The only caveat is iodized salt. The iodine content can degrade over 5 years or so, but the salt itself remains perfectly functional and useful forever. I checked this myself with the iodized table salt sitting in my cabinet. The expiration date printed on the canister is technically there by regulation, not because the salt actually goes bad. It's there because the FDA requires date labeling on food products, not because anything actually expires. For storage purposes, keep salt in a sealed container away from moisture, and it will last indefinitely. It's also one of the most useful food preservation tools you can own, because it's used to preserve other foods. Pickling, curing, brining. Salt is the original food preservation technology. A 4-pound canister of salt right now costs about $1.50 at most grocery stores. Buy a few extra. Not next month. This week. The price of processed foods will keep climbing, and having the ability to preserve your own meats, vegetables, and dairy is a skill and a tool worth having. Item 4. White sugar. Just like salt, white sugar doesn't expire. It's a simple carbohydrate with no moisture, no biological activity, and nothing for microorganisms to consume. Manufacturers put dates on sugar packaging because regulations require it, not because the product actually deteriorates. Decades-old sugar kept in a cool, dry place is identical in function and taste to sugar you bought last Tuesday. Brown sugar is a different story. It contains molasses, which introduces moisture, and brown sugar can harden into a brick within months. White sugar has none of those complications. I was cleaning out my pantry last spring and found a sealed bag of white sugar pushed to the back of a shelf. I have no idea when I bought it. Probably 4 or 5 years ago. I opened it. Looked perfect. Smelled perfect. Tasted fine. Went right into my coffee. For bulk storage, keep white sugar in airtight containers, food-grade plastic bins, or glass jars. Oxygen absorbers are optional, but useful. The main enemy is moisture and strong odors, since sugar can absorb smells from nearby things. At current grocery store prices, a 10-pound bag of white sugar runs about $7 to $9. That's 10 pounds of shelf-stable caloric energy for under $10. If you bake, if you preserve fruit, if you make anything in your kitchen, you want more of this on hand than you currently have. Item 5. Pure vanilla extract. Now here's one that catches people off guard the first time they hear it. Pure vanilla extract. Not imitation vanilla, but the real thing made from actual vanilla beans steeped in alcohol, never expires. The alcohol content, typically around 35%, acts as a complete preservative. Bacteria, mold, nothing can survive in it. McCormick and Nielsen Massey both confirm this in their product literature. Flavor may actually improve over time, the way a good wine or aged spirit evolves. It doesn't go bad. It gets better. Imitation vanilla extract is different. That's synthetic vanillin dissolved in water, and it does degrade over time. But pure vanilla? Indefinite shelf life. I noticed this myself when I picked up a bottle at a specialty shop a few years ago. The label said, "No expiration date." I thought it was a mistake. Then I started researching, and it turns out that's just the honest truth for any product preserved in alcohol. A 4-ounce bottle of pure vanilla extract runs about $10 to $12. That sounds expensive until you realize it's both an indefinite pantry staple and genuinely useful in dozens of recipes. If you bake, this is one to buy a few of now and tuck away. Keep it in a cool, dark cabinet away from heat and light. The flavor profile will deepen over the years. This is one of those rare situations where storing something long-term actually improves the product. Item 6. Distilled white vinegar. Vinegar has been used as a preservative for thousands of years, and it turns out the preservative doesn't need preserving. Distilled white vinegar is essentially a diluted acetic acid solution. The pH is too low for any microorganism to survive in it. Heinz, which produces more vinegar than almost anyone in the country, states directly that their distilled white vinegar has an indefinite shelf life when stored properly. It's used for pickling vegetables, cleaning surfaces, killing weeds, and as a cooking acid. It's one of the most versatile products in your entire home, and it costs about $3 for a gallon. When I was going through my preparedness checklist last year, Vinegar kept showing up on every single list I found. Emergency preparedness sites, homesteading guides, long-term storage resources. Always there. Apple cider vinegar is similar, especially raw, unfiltered varieties. The sediment you see at the bottom of a Bragg's bottle is called the mother. It's live cultures. And that doesn't mean the vinegar is bad. It means it's alive, and it will stay that way. A gallon of distilled white vinegar right now is under $3 at Walmart or Aldi. A gallon of apple cider vinegar runs $5 to $7. These are some of the most value-dense purchases you can make for a long-term pantry. Buy several gallons. Store them in a cool place. You will use every drop. Item 7. Rolled oats. Here's where we transition from pure, shelf-stable staples into real, everyday nutrition. And this one is powerful. Rolled oats stored in airtight, oxygen-free containers can last up to 30 years. That's according to food storage research from university extension programs and the USDA. The starch and fiber structure is stable. The fat content is low enough that rancidity is minimal when oxygen is removed. The difference between short-term and long-term storage here is oxygen. Oats in an open cardboard canister in your pantry will go stale and off flavor within a year. But oats in a sealed mylar bag with oxygen absorbers, placed in a cool, dark environment, you're looking at decades. I looked into this specifically after seeing oat prices creep up over the past 18 months. A 42-ounce canister of Quaker rolled oats was under $5 3 years ago. It's consistently higher now, and if global weather patterns continue affecting grain yields, which they have been, that trend doesn't reverse easily. For storage, buy large quantities of rolled oats from Costco or Sam's Club, divide into mylar bags, drop in oxygen absorbers, seal, label, and store. You can put 30 pounds of oats into a 5-gallon bucket for under $25 total, including the storage supplies. Oats are nutritionally dense. Fiber, slow-release carbohydrates, B vitamins, and a meaningful amount of protein. This is not empty-calorie emergency food. This is real, filling nutrition that will sustain your family through any disruption. Item 8. Hard liquor. I told you you wouldn't believe number 8. And here it is. Distilled spirits, whiskey, vodka, rum, bourbon, gin do not expire. Unopened bottles of distilled liquor have an indefinite shelf life. And here's the part that really surprised me when I dug into this. Unlike wine or beer, distilled spirits are shelf-stable because the distillation process removes almost all of the water content and concentrates the alcohol to a level, typically 40% or higher, at which microbiological activity is impossible. Nothing can grow in it. Nothing can break it down. I spoke to a guy who runs a small spirits distribution operation, and he told me straight, there is no such thing as a bottle of whiskey that goes bad if it hasn't been opened. The flavor can evolve. Evaporation can happen if the seal is compromised. But a properly sealed bottle of whiskey from 1970 is still perfectly drinkable today. The practical insight here is not just about drinking. Hard liquor has historically served as a barter currency during economic disruptions and crises. During the 2008 recession, fine whiskey held its value better than many traditional investments. Certain bourbon bottles that were under $50 a decade ago now regularly sell for $500 or more. I'm not telling you to become a spirits investor, but I am telling you that a sealed bottle of quality bourbon, vodka, or rum stored in a cool, dark place has utility far beyond what you might think. It's trade value, it's morale value, it's medicinal value, and it never expires. If you've already been buying the other items on this list, set a few bottles aside. You'll be glad you did. Item 9. Dried lentils. This one flies under the radar, and that's exactly why it's on this list. Dried lentils properly stored, again, airtight, oxygen-free, cool, and dry, can last anywhere from 25 to 30 years. They're one of the most nutritionally complete foods on this list, packing substantial protein, iron, folate, and fiber into every single serving. Lentils are also one of the fastest cooking dried legumes. Unlike dried beans that need hours of soaking and simmering, lentils cook in under 20 minutes with no soaking required. In an emergency situation, that speed matters. In daily life, it means they're actually usable, not just theoretical shelf food. When I started tracking grocery prices more closely last year, I noticed lentils have been creeping up steadily, red lentils especially, which are imported from Canada and India. A 1-pound bag that was under $1 in 2021 is regularly $1.50 to $2 now. That's a 50% increase in under 4 years. The global lentil supply is also affected by climate variability in major producing regions. This is a category where early movers are going to have a real advantage over people who wait. Buy in bulk from Indian grocery stores, international markets, or Costco's online bulk section. Seal in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. A 25-pound bag of red lentils right now runs roughly $18 to $25. For that price, you have roughly 100 servings of high-protein food that will last 3 decades. You do not want to be figuring this out when the prices double again. Item 10. Pure maple syrup. This one genuinely surprised me when I first learned it. Pure maple syrup, sealed and stored at room temperature, can last indefinitely. The high sugar concentration and low water activity prevent microbial growth the same way honey does. Canadian Maple Syrup Associations, which govern more maple syrup production than anyone else in the world, confirm that sealed pure maple syrup has no expiration date. Once opened, maple syrup should be refrigerated and will last about a year in the fridge. But sealed? Store it cool and dark, and it will outlast most of what you currently own. This matters for 2 reasons. First, maple syrup is a genuinely useful natural sweetener with a more complex flavor profile and slightly different glycemic behavior than white sugar. Second, and this is the part people aren't paying attention to, maple syrup production is vulnerable. I read through several seasons of production data from Vermont and Quebec last fall. Maple syrup is entirely dependent on a very specific weather pattern in early spring. Warm days, freezing nights. Climate shifts are making that window less predictable. Some producers are already seeing lower yields. This is not alarmist, it's agronomy. A quart of pure maple syrup right now is running $12 to $18 depending on grade and brand. It's not cheap, but if you use it regularly, buying an extra few bottles and storing them sealed is just smart math. Grade a dark maple syrup is the most flavorful and the most versatile. That's what I stock. Item 11. Cornstarch. This one is almost invisible on most lists, and that's a mistake. Pure cornstarch, stored in an airtight container, kept dry, has an indefinite shelf life. It's a fine, dry powder with no biological activity, no oils, nothing to break down. Argo, the most recognizable brand in the country, has quietly stated that cornstarch kept dry and sealed will remain effective indefinitely. Cornstarch is used for thickening sauces, gravies, and soups. It's used in baking as a substitute for some flours. It's used in personal care applications, as a dry shampoo, in home cleaning. It's a highly versatile product, and the price is still very low right now. I noticed this on my own grocery runs. A 1-pound box of cornstarch still runs under $2 at most stores. That price will not stay there forever. Corn prices have fluctuated significantly over the past several years tied to biofuel demand, weather events, and export patterns. Buy several boxes. Transfer them to sealed glass jars or airtight plastic containers. Keep them in a cool, dry cabinet. You won't notice the space they take up, but you will be very glad you have them when you need to thicken a soup or stretch a recipe further than you expected. Small, practical, cheap, and indefinitely shelf-stable. That's exactly what you want in a pantry staple. Item 12. Instant coffee. I saved this one for last because I know it will resonate with most people watching this. Freeze-dried instant coffee, stored properly in a sealed container, can last 20 to 25 years without meaningful degradation in caffeine content or flavor profile. The freeze-drying process removes nearly all moisture, eliminating the conditions that allow oxidation, mold, or bacterial growth. Brands like Folgers, Nescafé, and Mount Hagen freeze-dried instant coffee have been specifically tested by emergency preparedness researchers. Freeze-dried coffee outperforms ground coffee by a factor of 10 or more when it comes to shelf life. Ground coffee, by comparison, goes stale within weeks of opening. I think about this in terms of a real disruption scenario. If supply chains get complicated, and we've already seen what that looks like in 2020, 2021, and again in 2023, coffee is one of the first things people hoard. It will be unavailable or unaffordable almost immediately. And the practical daily reality is that instant coffee is a genuinely usable product right now, not just an emergency backup. I keep it in my car, in my go bag, and in my long-term pantry. A jar of Nescafe Classico freeze-dried coffee runs about $9 to $12 right now for a decent-sized jar. For long-term storage, transfer it to a dark glass jar with a tight lid, add an oxygen absorber, and keep it somewhere cool. You have just secured one of the most morale-critical foods in any emergency scenario, and honestly, in any morning. Don't skip this one. Here's what I want you to notice about everything on this list. None of it is exotic. None of it requires a bunker or warehouse. White rice, honey, salt, sugar, oats, lentils, vinegar, vanilla, cornstarch, maple syrup, instant coffee, and spirits. These are foods that humans have relied on for centuries, in some cases millennia, because they were designed, either by nature or by process, to last. The pattern here is simple. Low moisture, no biological activity, stable chemistry. These are the conditions that stop time for food. And the people who understood this principle, the farmers, the sailors, the homesteaders, the people who lived without grocery stores a short drive away, they never went hungry. Not because they were lucky, because they planned. What's changed today is that most of us have been conditioned to shop for what we need right now. The grocery store is always there. The shelves are always full. But we've seen in the last few years that those assumptions can break very quickly. Prices can double in a season. Shelves can go empty overnight. Supply chains are longer and more fragile than they look from inside a well-stocked Walmart. The people who figure that out early are the people sleeping well right now. You're not watching this by accident. You're here because some part of you already knows that the time to prepare is before you need to, not during and definitely not after. The practical step is not complicated. Start with the 5 cheapest items on this list: salt, white sugar, cornstarch, distilled vinegar, and white rice. Spend under $30 this week. Get the containers. Seal them properly. Label them. Put them somewhere cool and dark. Then next week, add lentils and rolled oats. The week after that, honey. Build it slowly, and you'll have a pantry that could sustain your family for months without spending more than you'd normally budget on groceries. Most people will not do this. Most people will keep shopping week to week, notice the prices going up, feel the anxiety, but not act. That's not you. That's not why you're here. You're here because you want to be ahead of it. You want to be the person who looked at the shelf a year from now and thought, I already have all of this. That is a genuinely powerful feeling. And it costs less than you think. If this was useful to you, and I hope it was, please hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps this channel reach people who need this information. Subscribe if you haven't already. Every week, we're putting out practical content about protecting your budget, your food supply, and your financial stability. Not panic, not fear, just real information from someone who's been researching this for years and wants to share what I find. Leave me a comment and tell me, which item on this list surprised you the most? I want to know. I read every single comment. Coming up next, we're going into something a little different. There are 12 common pantry items that people think will last forever, but actually go bad much faster than the label suggests. And some of them might be in your cabinet right now. You want to see that one? I'll see you there. Stay sharp, stay prepared, and thank you for being here.